When talking about Commonwealth's second most numerous race, the Aramathi, one shouldn't forget the often underestimated role of their calm, soft-spoken first speaker. At a glance, it may seem that she is just an ordinary elected leader with a fancy name, and it is true that, as her title suggests, she is the one who speaks on behalf of Aramathi people. But on the other hand, she doesn't seem to possess any of the attributes of power that are usually connected with leaders of entire civilizations. She commands no military power, she possesses no wealth, she has no official followers or political parties rallying behind her. And yet, her word carries enormous weight in Aramathi society, to such an extent that when she announced that her people will become citizens of the Commonwealth, almost no Aramathi opposed her decision. Now, in order to understand this level of influence, we need to travel to our old galaxy, the Milky Way, and go back 13 centuries in time, to the age when Aramathi were still a divided race that just entered the age of steam. In theory, they followed a common pattern. Invention of steam engine enabled rapid industrialization, which led to increased urbanization as cities needed more workers to man the factories. But in the old galaxy, Aramathi society was very different from its modern form. It was strictly stratified, with very harsh caste system that meant that over 98% population of the world worked for a handful of privileged ones. Of course, said nobility saw nothing wrong with it, but some of them, smarter than the rest, realized that such system cannot work forever. Sooner or later, lower rings of society would realize just how great the disparity of power was and were bound to rebel. So, in order to prevent chaos of the revolution, a new group has been created, speakers, who operated in a very similar manner to plebeian tribunes from ancient empire of Rome back on Earth. The job of the speakers was to bring concerns of the masses to their leaders and ensure that said leaders would keep their people in mind at all times, if only to ensure that angry mobs would not riot across the cities. But, as it happened, creation of speakers was only a temporary solution. Often ignored by Aramathi elites and ridiculed by those they were supposed to represent, speakers quickly found themselves unable to change anything, and, according to predictions, the revolution happened anyway, and for over a decade, flames of rebellion erupted in nations across Sajar, as lower rings of Aramathi society rose up to fight for their freedoms. But in the end, when the revolution finally died down, no side emerged victorious, and an uneasy status quo was restored. But with one change. The speakers have become far more important, with official laws guaranteeing their safety and a significant level of influence, which they were meant to use to pass necessary reforms. Unfortunately, things got out of hand very quickly. As often is the case, once speakers realized their new power, they quickly became, essentially, another nobility, but one that wasn't accountable to any higher authority. Over the next decades, their ranks filled with decadent individuals, who saw in this new position a chance to enrich themselves, while pretending to walk in the name of the people. Fortunately, not all speakers were like this. In fact, one of them, a young Aramathi from one of the smaller nations, became so obsessed with his duty to the people that he officially proclaimed that speakers should abandon all things material and focus all their efforts on bringing equality to all corners of Sajar. And, to surprise of many, he followed his doctrine. He abandoned his home, his wealth, and even his very name, and began working day and night to repair the society he believed to be deeply flawed. Over the next cycles, his following grew thousandfold. His ideals of peaceful idealism traveled far and wide, and soon, all across the world, the face of this nameless speaker became a rallying call for reforms. With new technologies like telegraph or radio, his words could reach even to the farthest corners of Sajar, and soon people from all castes of society started calling him the first true speaker, a title that, over the cycles, evolved into the one we know today. What's interesting is that first speaker was not trying to remove the caste system. He understood that, like in nature, some lead while others follow. Instead, he strived for creation of society where rewards were adequate to the amount of work of an individual and the benefit it brought to the society. Over the next 30 cycles, his campaign of logical and calm arguments, once never backed with threats of force, spread across Sajar like wildfire, and on 34th anniversary of the day when the first speaker burned the last record of his name, the old caste system was gone from Aramathi society, replaced with one that endured until Zrakan invasion, hundreds of cycles and millions of light years away. but most importantly, work of the first true speaker was the first step towards planetary unification, as his ideals ignored borders and bickering politicians. And though it would still be over 200 cycles before full unification, it was that single, nameless Aramathi that began the process that transformed divided nations of Sajar into a galactic power. The legacy of First Speaker was so important to the Aramathi that when he finally passed away, a new speaker was elected from among those who seemed to be the most worthy, and, like his predecessor, that young Aramathi immediately threw all ties to his previous life away and became another nameless symbol of unity. Not a leader, but a silent, vigilant protector, one who stood watch over all Aramathi, regardless of their origin. Today, current first speaker of the Aramathi follows the same rule. Her name has been stricken from all official records. Her home is but a modest cottage high in the mountains of New Sajar. But whenever Aramathi need to be reminded of their struggles and unity they need to face them, the first speaker is always there, ready to provide counsel to all who are willing to listen. Under leadership of the Commonwealth, she has an official place in the Council on Ortus, but most of the time, the speaker merely sends Aramathi foreign minister in her stead, preferring to stay away from great intergalactic politics. Only once she showed herself on Ortus, right after the Liberation War came to an end, and she traveled to humanity's new homeworld to thank them for eliminating Zrakan threat. There, in the orbit above Ortus, in a tearing speech, she proved that legendary charisma of all first speakers of Aramathi truly flows in her veins. Now we, the citizens of the Commonwealth, can only be proud that a leader of such magnitude decided to stand side by side with us in these trying times, so that we may all prosper among the stars.